What if the real seat of power in your life isn't out there, in your job, your bank account, or the opinions swirling around you, but right here, in the quiet parliament of your own soul? Imagine discovering that true government begins not with external control, but with inward sovereignty, that life bends most readily to a mind disciplined by spiritual authority. Has this ever happened to you? You try to fix everything on the outside, people, places, circumstances, only to feel the same old patterns, pushing back from within. What you're about to discover might surprise you. Prayer is not begging, it's legislating, not pleading with a distant force, but decreeing truth with clarity from the center of your being. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Think of your consciousness as a living chamber where laws are drafted, laws that determine how you see, decide, and act. When we speak of inner governance, we're talking about stepping into spiritual authority, choosing the quality of thought that shapes experience, and using prayer as the legislative power of the soul. The environment doesn't write your destiny, your thought does. The crowd doesn't set your direction, your decree does. Stay with me until the end, because we're about to reframe prayer from a ritual of desperation into a practice of dominion, a clear assertion of truth that reorders your inner world and, by correspondence, your outer world. Consider the difference. Supplication looks up at circumstances and asks, "Please change." Affirmation looks within and declares, "Order be established." One posture gives power to appearances. The other claims authority over them. When you decree truth, about peace, clarity, provision, or healing, you are not denying facts. You are invoking a higher fact, a spiritual law that governs the shifting weather of events. This is not about forcing outcomes. It's about aligning consciousness. It's not about wishful thinking. It's about disciplined thinking. The soul that governs does so by choosing its thoughts deliberately, directing its feelings purposefully, and letting its words carry the weight of intention. Maybe you've felt it, the tug-of-war between reaction and choice. A message pings, a memory stings, a fear whispers, and suddenly the outside world is steering you again. Has this ever happened to you? The art of inner government begins when you pause the reflex and activate the ruler within. You ask, "What is true here?" And you let your answer take the form of a decree, calm, exact, grounded. The moment you legislate from the soul, you're no longer a subject of circumstance. You've become its governor. What you're about to discover might surprise you. Even a single clear declaration, held with quiet certainty, can shift the emotional climate, sharpen your decisions, and create momentum where there was stagnation. This is why the language of prayer matters. Vague words create vague outcomes. Precise affirmations create precise results. "I hope" wobbles. "I declare" stabilizes. When you say, "I establish clarity in my mind," "I affirm peace in my heart," "I decree order in this situation," you aren't performing a script. You're drafting a law and entering it into the record of your consciousness. And consciousness, like any faithful government, enforces what it has legislated. Stay with me until the end, because in a moment we'll practice the shift from pleading to proclaiming, from reacting to ruling. For now, let this sink in. Life is not determined by the noise at the edges, but by the voice at the center. The question is never only, "What's happening out there?" but "What am I authorizing in here?" When you accept that the soul is the seat of power and prayer is its lawmaking act, everything becomes simpler, cleaner, more direct. You move from chasing change to commanding alignment, from scattered effort to focused authority. And as that authority settles into your tone, your posture, your choices, something steady begins to rise inside you. A calm executive presence that doesn't shout, yet everything listens. Stay with me until the end, because next, we'll step into the chamber together and draft your first decree, clear, grounded, and ready to govern what comes next. And if you enjoy diving into these kinds of insights, make sure to subscribe now. This way, every new video becomes part of your own journey of discovery, delivered straight to you without missing a step. There is a hidden truth that many overlook. The way you pray reveals the way you think about life itself. If you approach prayer as a desperate plea, you are unconsciously affirming that lack rules over you, that power is outside of you, and that circumstances are greater than your inner authority. But when prayer becomes an affirmation, everything shifts. Instead of reinforcing the feeling that something is missing, you recognize that good already exists, waiting to be acknowledged and expressed. This is not a play on words. It is a shift in consciousness, a transformation in mindset that carries profound impact on the journey of anyone who dares to practice it. Think of it as the difference between living as a subject of fate and living as a ruler of your own inner kingdom. Supplication keeps you in the posture of someone asking permission. Affirmation, on the other hand, is the voice of command, a decree that arises from the certainty that truth is already present. This distinction might feel subtle at first, but in practice it changes everything. The way you frame your words determines the way your subconscious receives them, and the subconscious does not argue, it executes. That is why the words spoken with authority, supported by conviction and emotion, legislate reality behind the scenes of your everyday life. The Roman centurion described in the Gospel understood this principle better than most. When he asked Jesus to heal his servant, he didn't beg or dramatize his request. He simply said, "Speak the word, and it will be done." He recognized the hidden structure of authority, that a command, once issued clearly and without doubt, produces an effect. What impressed Jesus was not blind faith, but the man's comprehension of how spiritual order works. The centurion knew that just as his soldiers obeyed his voice, so too would the unseen respond to a decree made with clarity. This was not superstition, it was revelation. This story holds a mirror to our own decisions. How often do we give power to circumstances, repeating words of fear or phrases of defeat, and then wonder why we feel powerless? Each time we beg life to be different, we reinforce the belief that we have no say in shaping it. But when we affirm, when we legislate with words that recognize truth already active within us, we stand in a new position. We move from being victims of random events to conscious participants in creation. The difference lies in the tone of our inner dialogue, the mindset we choose, and the courage to speak as if the outcome were already established. Behind the scenes of every breakthrough, there is always a mental decree. Thought, feeling, and spoken word act as signatures of authority. They establish laws within consciousness that reality is compelled to follow. This is why certain individuals seem to carry an unshakable presence, a quiet confidence that radiates without effort. It isn't luck, it's the result of inner government. They have learned to legislate their inner world so consistently that the outer world eventually reflects it. Decisions stop being reactions to fear and start becoming expressions of alignment. Life feels less like a battlefield and more like a field of order. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the essence of prayer as mental legislation invites us to reconsider what we allow into our thoughts, how we handle emotions, and how we shape the invisible patterns that determine visible outcomes. It challenges us to see prayer not as a last resort, but as the very architecture of our existence. And here's something I'd love for you to engage with. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me," because when you put these words into writing, you are not only affirming your understanding, you are also sealing the idea more firmly in your own consciousness, turning reflection into practice. If you pause for a moment and look around, everything you see, your home, your work, the very path you walk each day, seems solid, material, undeniable. Yet behind the scenes of all these forms lies something more subtle and far more powerful: the mind. The hidden truth is that the world is mental, not material. What we call reality is, in essence, the projection of our own consciousness, like a reflection cast on the surface of still water. This revelation is not a poetic metaphor. It is the foundation of every genuine transformation, the key that explains why two people can live under the same roof, breathe the same air, face the same conditions, and yet experience life in completely different ways. When we accept that everything is mental, we begin to see that thoughts are not fleeting sparks of imagination, but seeds planted in the fertile ground of the subconscious. Each idea entertained, each belief held, carries within it the potential to solidify into circumstances. And this is where mindset becomes not just a motivational buzzword, but the very architecture of destiny. If you carry thoughts of lack, fear, or conflict, the world responds with forms that mirror those inner states. If you cultivate clarity, harmony, and strength, your surroundings adjust accordingly. It is not superstition. It is law as precise as gravity, always at work whether we recognize it or not. This principle of mentalism is the master key of existence. It tells us that transformation does not begin by rearranging external conditions, but by reorganizing the inner order of thought. To change the movie, you don't rearrange the images on the screen. You change the reel that projects them. Life is no different. Every hidden struggle you've faced, every invisible battle between hope and despair, has been a clash of thoughts seeking to legislate your experience. Once you understand this, decisions stop being reactive impulses and become conscious acts of creation. You begin to notice the subtle ways you speak to yourself, the quiet affirmations or denials you issue daily, and you realize they are more than words. They are decrees shaping what comes next. The scriptures themselves reveal this truth with astonishing clarity. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Notice that the text does not describe tools, labor, or physical effort. Instead, it points to the mind of God, the eternal source, declaring into existence what did not yet appear. The hidden dynamic of creation is thought, expressed with authority, clothed in word, and sustained in consciousness. Let there be light, and there was light. Not because matter shuffled itself around, but because divine decree established order. This pattern, unveiled in Genesis, is the same pattern available to you and me. Creation begins in the mind, and the decree that follows sets everything into motion. Think of the impact this realization can have on your journey. Every project you dream of, every relationship you nurture, every step of your personal growth begins with an invisible conception. Behind the scenes of every visible outcome lies a mental seed. The job secured, the healing experienced, the peace restored, all trace back to a moment of inner declaration, a decision to affirm rather than deny, to legislate rather than plead. You are never simply reacting to life. You are shaping it, often unconsciously, by the images and convictions you allow to dwell in your inner chamber. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the recognition that creation starts in the mind invites us to reconsider how we use our own inner speech, how often we decree without realizing, and how easily we reinforce patterns that no longer serve us. This is the hidden truth behind repeated disappointments, and, at the same time, the revelation that holds the power to free us. Before we move forward, let me ask you to engage with this idea on a personal level. Write in the comments, "My world is mental." By doing this, you're not only interacting with the content, you're declaring a principle, anchoring it in your own consciousness, and beginning the practice of shaping reality through deliberate affirmation. Just as Genesis describes creation beginning with a divine decree, every human being continues that same pattern on a smaller scale. The hidden truth is that you too are a creator, shaping the fabric of your reality not with hammers and nails, but with thoughts and words, charged with emotion. Each time you dwell on an idea and allow it to sink into the depths of your subconscious, you are planting a seed. And like any seed placed in fertile soil, it does not remain invisible forever. It germinates, takes root, and eventually blossoms as the circumstances and experiences you call life. Behind the scenes of your daily routine, the subconscious works tirelessly to reproduce whatever has been most consistently impressed upon it. This is why prayer, when understood as affirmation and decree, is so much more than a ritual. It is mental legislation in action. If you hold thoughts of health with conviction, supported by images of vitality and words of gratitude, sooner or later that health begins to express itself in your body. If you nurture ideas of prosperity, affirming them with clarity instead of longing with desperation, then opportunities, resources, and synchronicities begin to appear. If you decree harmony, choosing to direct your inner speech toward peace instead of repeating conflict, relationships begin to soften and transform. The impact of this realization is extraordinary because it places the power of transformation not in the unpredictable hands of chance, but in the steady authority of your mindset. The law does not discriminate. Just as soil does not choose between seeds of roses or weeds, the subconscious accepts whatever you repeatedly impress upon it. If fear is your constant companion, fear becomes the crop. If confidence and clarity are your chosen thoughts, the harvest reflects them. This is not a superficial play of positive thinking. It is a profound revelation about how the mind shapes reality from the inside out. You may not notice immediate results, just as a farmer does not expect fruit the day after planting. But when the seed is nurtured with consistency, emotion, and faith, the result becomes inevitable. There are countless testimonies that demonstrate this law in action. People who have carried illnesses for years and found healing through sustained affirmations of wholeness, repeated not with anxiety, but with conviction. Families torn apart by resentment that found reconciliation when just one member decided to hold unwaveringly to the thought of forgiveness and peace. Entire communities that experienced unexpected transformation during times of crisis, when circles of prayer shifted collective fear into collective faith. These stories are not accidents. They are revelations of a principle that has been at work since the beginning of time. Think of the hidden journey behind each of these outcomes. What seemed impossible from the outside was already underway within. The woman who declared health while her body trembled was aligning with a higher truth before her body reflected it. The family member who affirmed harmony in the midst of conflict was planting a seed long before reconciliation became visible. The group that prayed for peace during war was legislating from a deeper level of consciousness, and their decree created a ripple effect with measurable impact. Transformation often looks sudden from the outside, but behind the scenes it is the natural harvest of seeds planted consistently in the field of the subconscious. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the way thoughts charged with emotion become reality invites us to rethink the very structure of our daily speech, our inner conversations, and the decisions we reinforce without even realizing it. If every repeated phrase is a decree, then the question becomes, what are you legislating with your words right now? To anchor this idea within yourself, I invite you to write in the comments, I plant the right seeds. By doing so, you're not only affirming the truth we've explored, but also taking the first conscious step in shaping the hidden patterns that will determine your future experiences. The parable of the sower is one of those timeless revelations that seem simple at first glance, but, behind the scenes, it conceals an extraordinary map of consciousness. When Jesus spoke of the seeds falling on the path, on rocky ground, among thorns, or on fertile soil, he was not giving an agricultural lesson. He was describing the inner journey of the mind. The seed, in its essence, is thought. The soil is the subconscious, that deep field where impressions take root. And the fruit is nothing less than the manifested life we see around us, our health, our relationships, our opportunities, and the very quality of our daily existence. If the soil is not prepared, even the best seed cannot flourish. This hidden truth explains why many prayers seem unanswered. A person may speak words of light, but if beneath the surface there is a subconscious filled with doubt, fear, or the noise of external negativity, the soil resists the growth of that seed. It's not that the seed lacks power, but that the ground is cluttered with thorns that choke it or hardened like stone that prevents it from penetrating deeply. This is why discipline of thought is so essential. Just as a farmer clears the field before planting, we too must clear the inner ground of resentment, anxiety, and conflicting images if we want our affirmations to take root. The impact of this teaching is enormous. It reveals that the difference between a barren field and a harvest of abundance lies not in chance or external conditions, but in the mindset we carry. When thought is consistent, when faith is sustained, when inner preparation is deliberate, the subconscious receives the seed fully, and manifestation becomes a natural consequence. There is no randomness in this process. The subconscious does not choose which seed to grow. It simply gives life to whatever has been impressed upon it with persistence and emotion. If you repeat doubt, you will reap instability. If you repeat harmony, you will harvest peace. If you affirm prosperity, sooner or later, your experience aligns with that decree. And here lies the most profound transformation. Real reform never begins outside. We are trained to think that if we change jobs, move cities, or rearrange circumstances, then life will align. But the hidden truth is that all external change is temporary if the inner soil remains the same. Prayer, when understood correctly, is not an attempt to alter appearances by force. It is the conscious reordering of the mind. It is inner government reshaping the subconscious landscape so that new seeds may sprout. Once this inner reform takes place, the outer world has no choice but to follow. The fruit will always reflect the soil, and the soil will always reflect the quality of thought planted within it. This is why stories of transformation are never simply about external victories. A reconciliation between family members begins long before the phone call is made. It begins when someone sows forgiveness in silence. Healing in the body begins not only with medicine, but with the decision to affirm health until the subconscious accepts it as law. Even social changes often trace their roots to circles of people who dared to plant seeds of vision and persistence in their collective consciousness. What appears as sudden impact is the blossoming of seeds that were nurtured patiently behind the scenes. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you recognize that reform begins in the soil of the mind, you start to notice how often we sabotage our own harvest. The constant repetition of worries, the unconscious acceptance of external negativity, the decision to believe appearances more than principles. All of these are ways we keep scattering seed on barren ground. The real journey is learning how to prepare, how to cultivate, how to discipline thought until the subconscious becomes fertile ground for truth. To anchor this idea within yourself, I invite you to write in the comments, "I prepare my inner soil." By putting it into words, you make a decision to clear the doubts and fears that hold you back and begin the practice of sowing thoughts that truly align with the life you wish to see unfold. Every thought you hold with conviction is like a seed entrusted to the soil of your subconscious. It does not remain an invisible whisper within the mind. It germinates, takes form, and in time it emerges as the reality you walk through each day. This is why affirmations cannot be treated as casual words or repeated phrases without depth. They must be sown in faith. Faith is the water, the light, and the hidden energy that makes the seed grow. Without it, the soil remains barren. With it, even the smallest affirmation of truth carries the potential to transform an entire life. The ancient principle is as clear now as it was when it was first written. Whatever a man sows, that will he also reap. To sow thoughts of fear is to reap instability. To sow affirmations of peace and strength is to live in the harvest of peace and strength. The law does not make exceptions. It simply reflects what has been planted. This is where the nature of prayer reveals its hidden truth. Real prayer is not lamentation, not the empty repetition of pleas thrown into the air, but a silent order of authority. When you pray correctly, you are not trying to bend divine will or persuade a distant God. You are aligning yourself with principle, issuing a decree that reshapes consciousness. It is a quiet command born of certainty, a spiritual decision that alters the structure of thought from which all life flows. That is why true prayer feels different. It is not desperation, but recognition, not begging, but legislation. It carries the same power as a law being spoken into existence, because in reality, that is exactly what it is. The most striking example of this is found in the story of Jesus at the tomb of Lazarus. Surrounded by grief and doubt, he did not cry out in despair. He did not attempt to negotiate with the unseen. Instead, he gave thanks before the miracle had even unfolded. "Father, I thank you for having heard me." Gratitude was his first act, a recognition that the decree had already been fulfilled in the invisible. Then, with clarity and authority, he spoke, "Lazarus, come forth." Not a request, not a wavering hope, a command born of complete certainty, and reality obeyed. The dead man walked out of the tomb because the consciousness of Christ affirmed life and refused to accept death as final. The impact of this scene goes beyond the miracle itself. It is a revelation of how prayer truly works when aligned with spiritual authority. Gratitude establishes the foundation, decree sets the direction, and faith sustains the manifestation. This pattern is not locked in history. It is a model for every individual seeking transformation today. Just as Jesus spoke with authority, so too are you invited to issue decrees that reshape the hidden structures of your life. The key lies in approaching prayer, not as an act of pleading, but as a recognition of truth that already exists, waiting to be affirmed. Think of how many times in your journey you may have prayed with anxiety, secretly wondering if your words carried weight, if perhaps you were being heard or not. The hidden truth is that the principle always responds, but it responds to authority, not to uncertainty. To pray with authority is to embody the mindset of Jesus at Lazarus's tomb, to give thanks before evidence appears, to decree results without hesitation, to stand in the certainty that consciousness aligned with divine principle cannot fail. It is not arrogance, but alignment, not control, but cooperation with the law that governs all creation. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding the structure of authoritative prayer leads us to examine how our inner dialogue can either echo the voice of command or dilute it with doubt. The journey of transformation begins when we shift from asking timidly to affirming boldly, from reacting to appearances to legislating truth from within. To bring this closer to your own life, I encourage you to write in the comments, "I decree with faith." By putting these words down, you're not only echoing the pattern of true prayer, but also anchoring within yourself the decision to speak with authority, to affirm life over fear, and to recognize the power of decree in shaping your reality. Every genuine act of prayer carries within it a structure, a rhythm that is not accidental, but essential. Just as music follows harmony and architecture requires balance, prayer that truly transforms consciousness unfolds through precise phases. This is what is called metaphysical treatment, and its hidden truth lies in the order it follows. Without this structure, prayer often becomes scattered, like seeds thrown on rocky ground. With it, every affirmation finds fertile soil, every decree gains weight, and every thought aligns with the greater law that sustains life. The three phases, recognition, unification, and realization, are not simply spiritual vocabulary. They are the backbone of effective prayer, the way consciousness moves from confusion into authority. The first phase, recognition, is like adjusting the lens of a camera. It brings into focus the central truth that God is infinite good, unchanging, absolute, and present. When you begin here, you are not trying to fix a problem. You are affirming a principle. This is crucial because the mind often rushes into prayer with the weight of fear or urgency, focusing on what seems wrong. But recognition demands a shift in perspective. It tells you to stop staring at the shadow and lift your eyes to the source of light. By declaring that God is intelligence, harmony, love, and power, you align your soul with the truth that governs all. It is like stepping into a higher frequency where solutions already exist. Without recognition, prayer risks being little more than emotional reaction. With recognition, it becomes grounded in eternal law. The second phase is unification, and this is where transformation begins to touch the heart. Recognition may affirm the greatness of God, but without unification, that truth can still feel distant, abstract, or external. Unification dissolves the illusion of separation by affirming oneness with the divine. Here, prayer shifts from begging to being. You no longer speak as a subject appealing to a higher power. You speak as an expression of that power itself. You declare, "The life of God is my life now. The intelligence of God flows through me. The love of God is my nature." This step is not about arrogance. It is about alignment. It closes the gap the human mind imagines between itself and the principle that sustains it. Once this bridge is crossed, prayer is no longer about convincing. It becomes about revealing. The impact of unification cannot be overstated. It changes mindset at the deepest level. Instead of living as if life were happening to you, you begin to live as if life is happening through you. Instead of decisions being made from fear or lack, they are infused with clarity and authority. This is why so many people feel powerless in their spiritual journey. They may recognize God as infinite, but they fail to unify that infinity with their own being. They hold on to the hidden belief that they are separate, unworthy, or too small to carry such truth. But once unification is embraced, the entire inner dialogue changes. Prayer is no longer about asking for intervention. It becomes the act of embodying divine expression here and now. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once recognition and unification are firmly in place, a new dimension opens. Realization. It is in this phase that the decree takes form, that the seed is planted with full authority, and that consciousness begins to legislate reality from within. It is here that prayer becomes creation in motion, not as theory but as lived experience. To anchor this reflection within you, I invite you to write in the comments, "I live in oneness." By doing so, you declare openly what unification affirms in silence, that you are not separate from the source, but an active expression of it, shaping your journey through the authority of divine truth. Realization is the turning point where prayer steps out of abstraction and becomes a living force. After recognition affirms God as infinite good, and unification bridges the false gap between you and that principle, realization arrives like a decree, spoken with authority and certainty. Here, words are not wishes. They are commands rooted in truth. You do not say, "I hope peace will come," or "I wish health could return." You declare, "Peace reigns here and now. Health flows in every cell of my body. Harmony governs this situation." These affirmations are not projections into a distant future. They are statements of fact made in the eternal present. To decree is to legislate reality from within, to imprint the hidden structures of the subconscious with images of order, strength, and abundance. This is where the spiritual principle becomes a mindset of authority, shaping not only the inner world, but also the visible circumstances that follow. Yet realization does not end with the decree itself. Once the word has been spoken, silence must follow. This silence is not emptiness, but the fertile stillness where the seed germinates. Just as a farmer does not dig up soil every day to check if the seed is sprouting, the soul must not undermine its own decree by revisiting the problem, by doubting, or by repeating anxiously. True authority knows that once the law is set in motion, it continues to act in the unseen until the harvest appears. Silence, after the decree, is a discipline of trust, a refusal to contradict what has already been spoken. Many prayers fail because people plant the seed in faith, but then uproot it with fear, uncertainty, or endless repetition. The hidden truth is that silence is as powerful as the decree itself, for it is the resting ground where manifestation takes shape without interference. This brings us directly to the role of the subconscious mind, the vast and fertile soil where all seeds of thought are sown. It does not argue, it does not filter, it does not evaluate what is true or false. It simply accepts, absorbs, and reproduces whatever is planted in it with repetition and emotion. Think of it as a perfect servant or a tireless gardener. If you sow health, it yields vitality. If you sow fear, it yields instability. If you plant seeds of confidence, you begin to walk with authority. If you allow seeds of resentment, they too will sprout, shaping the world around you with conflict. The subconscious does not judge. It mirrors. This is why prayer, when understood as mental legislation, is so powerful. Every decree is a seed. Every affirmation is a planting. Every thought you sustain with emotion is another layer of roots, pressing into the soil of your being. Consider the hidden impact this has on your daily journey. Words casually spoken, decisions made without awareness, even the emotions you entertain behind the scenes, all of these are seeds. The subconscious cannot tell the difference between a phrase said half in jest and a phrase said with deep conviction. It simply takes it in. That is why transformation requires vigilance. If the soil is always ready to bear fruit, then the gardener must be intentional about what seeds are placed within it. Mindset is not just about thoughts you hold for a moment. It is about what you repeat until it becomes structure, what you affirm until it becomes identity, what you sustain until it becomes reality. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because once we understand the subconscious as the ground of all experience, the next revelation is how to cultivate it deliberately, how to train it with precision, discipline, and authority, so that it no longer reproduces fear or limitation, but only the patterns of truth you choose to establish. To make this reflection personal, write in the comments, "I choose my seeds," because every time you affirm this, you remind yourself that your thoughts are not accidents, but choices, and each choice carries the hidden power to shape the journey ahead. Affirmations only become transformative when they are delivered with clarity, charged with emotion, and sustained with persistence. A vague or half-hearted statement has little weight, but when a phrase is spoken with precision and felt deeply in the heart, it imprints itself into the subconscious like a seal pressed into soft wax. The repetition of that truth is what engraves it permanently, not because the universe needs convincing, but because your inner soil needs consistent cultivation. Every time you affirm with conviction, whether it be peace, strength, prosperity, or healing, you are reinforcing the hidden architecture of your life, training your mind to accept the reality you choose rather than the one imposed by fear or circumstance. This is why affirmations practiced as ritual but without emotion often fail to create impact, while a single declaration, made with burning certainty, can shift the direction of an entire journey. This leads us to a revelation that can be both empowering and unsettling. Life events are never random. What happens outwardly is not a coincidence, nor is it merely fate rolling its dice. Every circumstance is the harvest of mental seeds planted long before, some deliberately, others unconsciously. Your current challenges, relationships, opportunities, even the obstacles you face, are all fruits of thoughts once entertained, fears once indulged, or truths once affirmed. It is a law as exact as gravity, cause and effect at the level of consciousness. While this realization demands responsibility, it also unveils an extraordinary freedom. If every event was seeded, then new seeds can be planted. If your past mindset shaped the present, then your present mindset is shaping the future right now. This hidden truth removes the illusion of victimhood and replaces it with the authority of choice. Prayer, therefore, is not a reaction to events, but the introduction of new causes that transcend the old. It is not about patching up circumstances as if they were accidents. It is about establishing new laws within your consciousness that inevitably manifest outward. To pray in this way is to step out of the mindset of survival and into the mindset of creation. Instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to declare, "This is what I decree into being," and that shift changes everything. It is the difference between being carried along by the waves of life and taking hold of the hidden current that directs them. Think about the impact this has on decisions. If you believe life is random, then every choice feels like a gamble. But if you recognize that your consciousness is causal, then every decision becomes a seed, every thought a decree, every affirmation a force. This is not philosophy to be admired from a distance. It is a practical law that can be tested in the behind-the-scenes workings of your daily life. When you sow consistent affirmations of harmony, peace, and abundance, you will begin to notice subtle shifts. Conversations take a different tone, unexpected opportunities arise, conflicts soften, and even your body responds to the new frequency you are sustaining. These are not miracles in the sense of breaking natural law. They are revelations of how natural law has always been working, waiting for you to engage it consciously. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once we understand prayer as the power to establish causes, the question becomes, how do we ensure that those causes are pure, coherent, and strong enough to reshape the patterns already rooted in the subconscious? This is where the discipline of inner alignment becomes indispensable, for only a unified mind can project a decree powerful enough to override the old structures. To anchor this idea in your heart, I invite you to write in the comments, "I plant with intention," because when you put those words down, you're not just interacting with this message. You're declaring to yourself that your life is not a matter of chance, but of seeds you choose to sow, again and again, with clarity, emotion, and persistence. Joseph's story is one of the most striking examples of how inner consciousness shapes outer destiny. Betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery and thrown into prison for a crime he didn't commit, Joseph had every reason to surrender to despair, to allow bitterness and resentment to govern his heart, yet he chose a different mindset. Instead of being consumed by what had been taken from him, he remained faithful to the hidden truth within. His alignment with a higher order never wavered, and because of that, the very conditions that were meant to destroy him became the stepping stones that lifted him into rulership. His journey reminds us that true authority is not measured by external positions, but by the unshakable stance of consciousness that refuses to yield to appearances. This is the essence of governance, not controlling events, but ruling your response to them. You cannot always dictate the circumstances that unfold in your life, but you can choose the lens through which you interpret them. That decision alone determines the path you walk. Every crisis becomes either a trap or a doorway, depending on how you meet it. When you align your inner state with truth, what seems like defeat reveals itself as preparation. What looks like loss unfolds as transformation. This is why people who master their inner dialogue often seem to move through life with a quiet strength, as if they see behind the scenes of reality. They're not untouched by challenges, but they understand that circumstances are mirrors, not masters. The hidden truth is that many live their lives attempting to bend external events to their will, while ignoring the only arena where real power resides, the mind. The more you try to fight appearances, the more resistance you encounter. But when you govern from within, when you choose faith over fear, peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, everything outside eventually rearranges itself to match the vibration you sustain. This is not resignation. It is conscious dominion. It's the quiet decision to let your responses be dictated by principle rather than panic, by vision rather than reaction. Here is where fear enters the picture as the great saboteur. Fear, in its essence, is nothing more than misdirected faith. It is faith in the wrong outcome, faith in illusions, faith in shadows. To fear is to give power to what does not yet exist, to water the weeds instead of the seeds you wish to grow. And because the subconscious cannot distinguish between truth and illusion, it simply takes the images charged with the strongest emotion and begins to shape them into form. That is why fear can be so destructive. It carries the same creative energy as faith, but channels it toward distortion. Overcoming fear is not about pretending it doesn't exist, nor is it about fighting it directly. It is about redirecting that same energy back into alignment with truth. When Jesus asked, "Why are you afraid, you of little faith?" he was not condemning but revealing a principle. Fear and faith cannot coexist in the same space. One must yield to the other. Every time you replace the inner dialogue of fear with a decree of truth, you reclaim authority. Every time you shift from imagining worst-case scenarios to affirming divine order, you are withdrawing faith from illusions and investing it back into reality. This practice is not theoretical. It changes how you walk, how you breathe, how you carry yourself in the middle of storms. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the real challenge is not simply identifying fear, but learning how to transform it into a force that strengthens your inner dominion. Fear reveals the very areas where growth is demanded, where alignment has not yet taken root, where the subconscious still clings to old patterns. If you can face it with awareness, it becomes not an enemy, but a teacher. To bring this closer to your own journey, I'd like you to write in the comments, "I choose truth over fear." Put it down as a personal declaration, because the moment you name it, you start to take back the power you may have unknowingly handed over to illusions. Storms have always been more than weather events in sacred texts. They are mirrors of the turbulence that shakes the human heart. When Jesus calmed the sea with a single decree, "Peace, be still," he was revealing something beyond the surface. The wind and waves symbolized inner agitation, thoughts colliding, emotions rising, doubts crashing against faith, and the Christ within him, the same Christ present within you, demonstrated that true authority is not exercised by fighting the storm, but by commanding from a place of unshakable peace. This hidden truth carries immense impact for our own journey, because it teaches that no matter how fierce the outer chaos appears, It is always a reflection of inner states, and when the mind remembers its source, even the sea must obey. The challenge, of course, is what happens when the waves feel stronger than our resolve. We've all experienced moments where fear whispers louder than faith, where anxiety clouds judgment, where the pressure of circumstances feels impossible to bear. In those moments, many collapse into panic or distraction. But those who learn the discipline of reconstruction through affirmations discover a different path. By visualizing divine order and affirming truth repeatedly, they reprogram not only their thoughts, but their emotional responses. It is as if, behind the scenes, a new structure is being laid brick by brick in the subconscious, stabilizing the entire being. Instead of reinforcing fear with repeated mental images of failure or catastrophe, they sow seeds of peace, provision, and protection. Slowly, those seeds sprout and reshape the emotional landscape, bringing calm even before outer changes appear. This is not about wishful thinking. It is about governing the imagination with precision. The mind is a projector, constantly casting images into experience. If left unchecked, it replays fears like a broken record, and life reflects the same chaos. But when directed with intention, affirmations transform imagination into an instrument of creation. Saying, "I am safe," "I am provided for," or "I am guided," is not simply comforting. It is an act of spiritual legislation. It dissolves fear at its root by shifting the inner pattern, and once the inner atmosphere changes, outer storms begin to lose their grip. Now comes the paradox that few are willing to face. The greatest results often appear not through frantic effort but through stillness. The words of the psalm, "Be still and know that I am God," are not poetic advice, but an exact instruction for mastery. Stillness is not passivity. It is the art of suspending doubt, of silencing the restless search for proof, of refusing to uproot the seed once planted. Just as a farmer does not dig into the soil each day to check whether the seed has sprouted, so too must we trust the unseen process of prayer and affirmation. The hidden truth is that agitation interrupts growth, while calm allows it to unfold. This is why stillness is called the art of results. It takes courage to stop rehearsing the problem, to stop consulting every opinion, to stop giving energy to appearances. Yet in that quiet immobility, the subconscious completes its work. The principle moves without obstruction, and life begins to align itself in ways that no human calculation could orchestrate. What looks like inaction from the outside is, in reality, the highest form of action, the surrender of fear and the enthronement of truth. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you understand the power of stillness, you begin to see that silence itself can become a weapon of authority, not weakness. The less you feed the storm with words of doubt or stories of defeat, the faster peace takes root. Silence, when grounded in conviction, is not emptiness, but fullness. It is faith, resting in its own certainty. To anchor this in your own path, I invite you to write in the comments, "Peace governs my storm." Let it be a reminder not only to yourself, but also to others reading that the calm within is always stronger than the chaos outside. The discipline of prayer reveals a hidden truth that challenges our usual way of thinking. Once the decree is spoken, it must be left in silence. Many believe that repeating the same affirmation countless times makes it stronger, but when repetition is driven by fear, it does the opposite. It is like a farmer who plants a seed and then digs it up each day to see if it has sprouted. The soil cannot do its work under such interference, and the subconscious mind is no different. To decree once with authority and then remain silent is to show trust in the law of consciousness. Silence after decree is not neglect. It is the fertile stillness where the unseen begins to move, where the roots form before the first shoots break through the surface. History and personal testimony alike are filled with stories that prove the power of this silence. Businessmen at the edge of collapse who issued one clear decree of abundance and then walked forward as if it were already true, later finding opportunities open in ways they never could have planned. Mothers who prayed once with unwavering certainty over a child in danger and then refused to revisit the fear, later witnessing outcomes that doctors themselves described as miraculous. Even prisoners, locked behind bars, who decreed their inner freedom and in silence aligned with that truth, later saw their circumstances shift toward unexpected release. These are not tales of chance. They are revelations of a principle at work. The decree, followed by inner quiet, becomes like a law signed into existence, and life itself is compelled to obey. This silence is not passive. It is charged with authority. It is the stillness of someone who knows that truth, once spoken, is already alive. In the invisible, to remain silent is to resist the temptation of panic, to refuse the noise of appearances, and to anchor yourself in certainty. This kind of silence is a decision, a posture of faith that does not need to be loud to be effective. In fact, its power comes precisely from its restraint. The mindset shifts from pleading for results to walking in alignment with them, and in that alignment, transformation unfolds behind the scenes, often in ways too intricate for the conscious mind to predict. At this point, it becomes vital to recognize that what empowers silence is not merely human willpower, but the presence of Christ as a universal principle. To limit Christ to the historical figure of Jesus is to miss the larger revelation. Christ is the eternal pattern of divine authority and harmony present in all people, waiting to be recognized and expressed. Jesus embodied this principle perfectly, which is why his words carried such impact, but the essence of Christ is not confined to him alone. It is the hidden truth of our own being, the light that still waits to govern through recognition. This recognition changes everything. It transforms the way you pray, the way you affirm, the way you walk through challenges. If Christ is within you as principle, then the same authority demonstrated in calming seas and raising the dead is also available in your decisions, your affirmations, your decrees. It is not about imitating actions, but about embodying the consciousness that gave rise to them. To say, Christ in me governs this situation, is to awaken to the principle already present, the eternal law that answers not to desperation, but to recognition. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once we grasp that Christ is not limited to Jesus, but is the universal presence within, it invites a profound shift in identity. It challenges us to stop living as spectators of miracles, and to start living as participants in the same law, carrying the authority of truth into every corner of our journey. To root this reflection more deeply, I invite you to write in the comments, "The Christ is within me." By doing so, you are not simply echoing words, you are affirming a revelation that has the power to reshape your mindset, your responses, and ultimately, your reality. The parable of the prodigal son is often told as a story of morality, of rebellion and forgiveness. But beneath its surface lies a mental map of profound transformation. The son's journey into a distant land represents the wandering of consciousness, the decisions that pull us away from truth into the illusions of lack and separation. His famine and despair symbolize the inevitable emptiness of living disconnected from principle. And his return to the Father is not just a physical homecoming, but the recognition that truth never left. It was always waiting, always present, always ready to restore. This return is the hidden truth at the core of all spiritual awakening. When consciousness realigns with its source, the feast begins. The robe is given, the ring placed upon the hand. It is the reminder that no matter how far one strays, the journey back is always a single decision away. A decision to recognize truth and live from it once more. When we understand prayer in this light, it stops being a special occasion reserved for moments of crisis and becomes the very framework of daily life. Prayer integrates itself into every choice, every word, every gesture. It is present when you decide how to respond to someone's anger, when you speak about your future, when you handle your finances, when you nurture your relationships. Conscious affirmations are not just for the quiet of the morning. They govern the conversations you have at work, the self-talk that guides your health, and even the silent thoughts that shape the atmosphere in your home. To live this way is to realize that you are never not praying. Every word carries weight. Every thought is a seed. Every decision is an act of legislation in the hidden chambers of your mind. This is why a disciplined practice can strengthen inner governance. A 7-day cycle of focus allows you to train different dimensions of life deliberately. One day you may dedicate to the mind, affirming clarity, peace, and wisdom in thought. Another day, to the Word, choosing declarations that align with truth rather than fear. Another to the body, speaking life and vitality into every cell. Another to relationships, affirming harmony, forgiveness, and mutual respect. Then to activity, affirming that every action is guided and purposeful. To finances, affirming provision and abundance. And finally, to silence, learning to rest in stillness without interference, trusting the law at work. This rhythm not only builds habit, but engraves truth deeper into the subconscious, strengthening the inner structure that governs all outer outcomes. The impact of such a practice is remarkable. It transforms ordinary days into sacred journeys. You begin to see connections where before there were only fragments. You notice that a single decision to affirm harmony changes the tone of an entire conversation. You realize that choosing to speak abundance shifts how opportunities arrive. You discover that taking time for silence reorders the chaos of your emotions. These revelations do not appear as lightning strikes, but as steady, unfolding transformations, proof that consistent inner work creates lasting external results. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the real secret of integrating prayer into daily life is not just discipline, but recognition, the awareness that every sphere of life is already connected to truth, and that prayer is the art of revealing what was hidden all along. It is less about forcing outcomes, and more about removing the veils that obscure them, allowing the principle of Christ within to govern freely. To embody this in your own journey, I invite you to write in the comments, "I return to truth," because each time you declare it, you reaffirm the prodigal son's discovery, that no matter how far the mind strays, the soul always knows the way home. Obstacles to prayer do not lie in the unwillingness of the divine to respond, but in the contradictions we carry within ourselves. Supplication born of desperation, doubt that erodes conviction, impatience that digs up the seed before it matures, incongruence between thought and action, and the constant re-speaking of the problem. These are the hidden saboteurs that weaken the authority of prayer. Each time you declare truth and then follow it with words of fear, you cancel your own decree. Each time you affirm abundance and then complain of lack, you are scattering thorns into the same soil where you planted roses. It is not that the principle fails, but that the inner chamber has been filled with mixed instructions, leaving the subconscious to reflect back confusion instead of clarity. This is why discipline of thought becomes the silent backbone of transformation. The subconscious mind does not negotiate, it reproduces. If you feed it two opposing images, it mirrors both, resulting in stagnation or delay. To avoid this, one must cultivate consistency, a mindset where every word, decision, and action aligns with the decree already spoken. Behind the scenes, this consistency becomes the engine that drives manifestation forward, even when appearances suggest nothing is happening. Faith is not about constant repetition, but about inner coherence, the steady choice to sustain truth without contradiction. Impatience is perhaps the most subtle of these obstacles. It whispers in the mind, "Why hasn't it happened yet?" That question alone plants doubt, as if the law of consciousness could fail. But the hidden truth is that every decree has its appointed time, every seed its season of growth. The journey is not about forcing the fruit to appear, but about trusting the process. Those who waver sabotage their own harvest, while those who stand firm allow the invisible to become visible without interference. It is not about speed, it is about certainty. And then comes the revelation that dissolves all excuses. The kingdom of God is not a distant promise, nor a future destination, nor something external to be reached through effort. It is here, now. It is the dimension of consciousness where divine authority governs freely, available to anyone who chooses. Alignment. To live in this awareness is to stop chasing fulfillment outside and to begin recognizing it within. The kingdom does not arrive with signs to be observed. It manifests when inner dominion is exercised through prayerful authority. The hidden truth is that you are never waiting for heaven to descend. You are awakening to the reality that heaven is already present, waiting for recognition. This shifts everything. life ceases to be a waiting game and becomes an unfolding of what already is. Decisions are no longer made from lack but from fullness. Relationships are no longer sought to complete but to express what is already whole. Finances, health, opportunities, all of these become extensions of a consciousness rooted in the kingdom within. The impact of living this way is not only personal peace, but also a transformation in how you walk through the world. You carry presence, not anxiety. You radiate authority, not fear. You become a living testimony that the kingdom of God is not theory but experience, not tomorrow but today. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic because the recognition of the kingdom here and now invites us to explore how daily life can be governed from this awareness, how every moment, no matter how ordinary, becomes sacred when approached from inner authority rather than outer dependence. To seal this reflection within yourself, I encourage you to write in the comments, "The kingdom is here," because when you affirm it in words, you begin to train your mind to perceive it in action, turning the hidden truth into a lived reality that shapes your entire journey. If you've journeyed with me all the way to this point, I want to thank you for allowing these ideas to unfold in your heart, as much as in your mind. If the reflections we shared brought clarity or sparked something meaningful for you, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next step in this path. We're building this space together, thought by thought, truth by truth. And since you've stayed until the end, let's seal this moment with something simple. Leave a comment saying, "I'm with you until the end." It's a beautiful way of showing that these words found a place in you. If the conversation resonated, a like on this video is more than welcome. It tells me this journey is making a difference. And before you go, there's a video right here that complements everything we've explored. Click and continue with me over there.